everyone, I am back for another resin pour. Gonna work on finishing up the drip bowl, as well as actually get to pour some coasters in this video. So super excited by that. So as you can see, I've got my counterculture DIY. This is the medium viscosity. I love it for when doing molds and these pours like this, just because it does hold the colorants that I add very nicely. They do offer a few different options if you don't like the medium, maybe too thick to work with or too thin, depending on what you are doing. They have a few other options as well, so definitely check that out. I have found with their resin, it is crystal clear. Even though you may see here that part B is a little bit yellow, I'm not concerned because it's all going to clear up once I mix it. So I'm not concerned about having a flawed product because it will clear up. If you watched the last video, you will know this, but so this might be a little bit repetitive, but I do put part B in first. It is thinner, not so thick, so I put that in 1 cup, and then I will put part A in another cup, and then I combine those. I add those to 1 big cup, combining and mixing them from the big cup. This is the way that I have found that it works the best for me. Their tops on their resin, they didn't always have those, but the ones that I've ordered more recently do have them. Recent in this set is actually over a year old. So it does last a long time for me at least. But and using those seals on them does keep it, I think, a lot better and fresher. If that makes any sense with resin, but yeah. So B is going to be thicker. I do not suggest weighing. Some artists weigh their resin and be able to determine how much they need based on weight. However, with counterculture, the A is going to be always thicker than the B is, because the A is the hardener portion. So I find that it is just not wise to weigh, because you will always then end up using more B than A in that scenario, just because B is going to be lighter than A. So I do it by measurement. So both part A and B equal parts being mixed together here as I add them. It's almost off camera just because of it's half on, half off, just because of where I was working with on this particular project, and to be zoomed in so that you can see some of the finer details here coming up a little bit later in this video. So scraping out my cup best as possible. That way, because I have measured that, I do not want to leave any left over in the cup. I want to get as much of that as I poured into the next cup, so that we are getting equal parts, or equal as possible parts. Scraping our sides, mixing this. I stir. I'll move that out of the way. I'm going to stir this so you can see it. I like to stir at least 3 minutes, making sure that I scrape the edges, making sure that I scrape off my mixing stick as well, just trying to make sure that I am getting as much of that mixed in and combined as possible. My wrist will get a little tired at times, so if I pause or I switch hands, that's just to keep that wrist going. The other thing is you will be able to tell by look. So you'll notice sometimes that I'll pick up the stir stick and let the resin kind of run off of it. I am looking at the clarity of the resin when I'm doing that. I am trying to determine, is it mixed? Do I see any little white lines where I can tell that it hasn't fully mixed? I'm looking to see if it's streaky looking or if it's very clear. Not super worried about bubbles here. a lot of people focus on the bubble aspect, and I get it. I do get concerned about bubbles, but I don't let that hold me back or hold me up. I think bubbles are a natural part of the resin process, so you're going to inadvertently get them. So having stress over them doesn't do anybody any good, because they're always going to be of concern, shall we say. So I'm not super concerned. Now, I do take some things into precaution. So I don't use a wooden stick. If you notice, I am using a plastic stir stick, also from Counterculture DIY. They come in, I think, a pack of 5. Pretty cheap. Definitely worth it. You can reuse them over and over. They make a silicone one. I do like it as well, and we'll use it. I just have a harder time keeping it as clean or getting it cleaned back up after use. So I haven't used those ones as much, because I've kind of found my groove with these. So here I am, picking it up, letting it kind of drizzle down. I'm looking to just see how clear it is. Seeing if it's ready. Pop that down on the table a couple times. Try to lift those bubbles. Not throwing it hard down, but definitely making it hit the table so that it can force those bubbles up to the surface so that I can then pop them. Clean up some of my area. I like to clean as I go, as much as the project allows. So I'm not going to allow the project to get out of hand or resin to get ruined by cleanup, but it doesn't hurt for that resin to sit for a couple moments, let some bubbles rise. So why not use that time wisely and clean up that workspace, clean up my mat, clean up around it. Then heat gun here, just a nice light heat gun, not on high, it's on low. This is the Counterculture DIY heat gun. They have it on sale right now. Super awesome. Today is March 8th, and they've got a brand new website, lots of sales going on. Good time to pick up on your resin too. I am not sponsored by them, but if you know me whatsoever, I love them. You can see on the mat, it does say Counterculture DIY. Their website, www.counterculturediy.com. So prepping my molds here, I took just a little bit of packing tape to stick on those molds, get any leftover glitter or resin drops from previous or just while they were sitting out, dust, things like that. Just trying to get them level on my tray here, making sure that I have space for everything before I'm going to begin to pour the resin. This particular leveling table that I'm working off of, I can't find the round one on Amazon anymore available, but they do have a rectangle or oval one. I truthfully would say that's probably a little bit better than the round, just because you're going to get a little bit more working surface, which would be beneficial. Again, taking the tape, I could see a little bit of glitter or dust or something in the way. So, and I'm just adjusting one of the legs on the bottom of this because it wasn't sitting quite right. So I wanted to go ahead and get that leg down a little bit more and get this to sit better. Of course, check that it's level. Make sure that I'm going to be working with a flat surface. Then I'm getting my cups ready. These are going to be used for colorants. These are just plastic, like bathroom cups, small cups that you can find at any Walmart, CVS, Walgreens. Probably get them on Amazon. Truthfully, I just like those for colorant stuff, for heavy colorant stuff, that I can then just toss it. I don't have to worry about cleaning it and getting all the color out of it. It's just an easier setup and process by doing that. I am going to, because I know in the last video, 1, I didn't have enough resin to do the coasters, but 2, I forgot to leave clear. So here I'm starting to pour just the clear in, give us a little base to work off of. When you're doing flowers, if you're wanting a bloom, you will need to make sure that you have a good base of that resin situated. So getting a good base situated here to work with because we want to be able to produce that bloom. Now I do have a few silicone cups here that I'll add some colorants to in small amounts in these small cups. Those aren't hard to get cleaned up and in good standing again, but for the other colorants it is more of a challenge, so I just use those plastic, or you can get paper cups as well. They are both options that are out there, so just something that you can put that color and not have to worry about cleaning it, getting it cleaned up. Just trying to make sure that in those cups I have about the approximate even between them, even though I'm pouring from them. Still want them to have relatively the same amount across the way. Had some little drips, so of course, trying to avoid waste, I use my gloves and go ahead and wipe up the side to help get that even, or put those drips back in the cup, basically. Avoid, I know it's only a small amount, but small amounts are going to add up. A little bit here, a little bit there, you're going to start losing material, and I don't like that. All right. So before I grab my heating gun, I always wipe off my gloves, so that, especially because I just wipe those sides of the cups. I use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a paper towel, and I just put that rubbing alcohol in the paper towel and wipe off my gloves. I will use that paper towel then to clean some of the silicone cups for the first round to get the excess resin out of those silicone cups. And then I will use a fresh paper towel to continue that clean. Here, just making sure the resin shifts all the way to the edges, gets to my edges, situates. You did see that I used the heat gun. Again, just popping a few of those bubbles, getting them back out of our way as this resin is going to settle. So keeping it here, I let this sit for a little bit. This sat for about 10 minutes. So I came back to it, and now we are going to add colors to the cups and start actually making the bloom. Reason why you want to let it sit is it's going to let the resin start the hardening process. Of course, you don't want it solid. You don't want it to flash cure on you. That's not any fun to experience. Flash curing can make you lose a lot of resin really fast. So be careful. That is when it can get way too hot too fast. And then it flash cures. Not only is it wasteful, but it is awful to have in your space. It can actually start a fire, and it could start smoldering and smoking and then start that fire, and it's really bad chemical smell. You shouldn't be breathing that. So here we're going to add some Armor Art white. This is a colorant, and this helps with the blooming. You can also use this for making your cells, for ocean scenes, things of that nature. I love it when I'm doing blooms. It really helps. You can also use casting craft for blooms. That will work as well. It's also a white colorant. I used it for a really long time. I still have it. I just haven't used it as much because I have this Armor Art from Counterculture that I have enjoyed using. These are Dispersion Colors and Intense Colors from Counterculture DIY. They don't take much, and they are going to give us a lot of color. This Plum Crazy is a little stopped up, so that nozzle is blocked up. So honestly, just dipping my stir stick in it, and I'm able to get enough on the stir stick to color the resin, which is fantastic. These little silicone stir sticks, you're going to get tired of me saying this because I feel like a broken record, but are also from Counterculture DIY. They just have a really awesome products, and I swear I'm not sponsored by them, but probably should be as much as I talk about them. So again, the flamingo color was a little stopped up, but using the stir stick, I think these little ones come in a set of 3 or 5 again. They are relatively inexpensive as well. A lot of times you can catch them on sale. They are, I believe, on a sale right now, actually. So, and then just mixing a little bit of mica powder in this little itty bitty silicone cup that I use a lot of times for our UV resin, but using it here for this pour to put some mica powder in. This is going to be the center of those flowers. That's that gold shimmer mica powder. Really like it. Then just mixing all my colors. So there's that pink flamingo getting mixed up. As you can see, that colorant was stuck to the stick, is now getting spread amongst the resin and going to come out very nicely. Then I scrape my edges. I try to really make sure you see me picking it back up, making sure that the resin is well mixed, or the colorant is well mixed into the resin. And then move on to the next. And once again, you can tell it's starting to really color that resin. Didn't take a ton of that colorant. I think that's why intense colors and dispersion colors, that's where they get their name. They are strong, don't take much. Scrape our sides, of course, check. This one's a little bit more iridescent or see-through. I do like it though. It's a beautiful color. And then, oh, this one, Tsunami is the name of this one. And it is just a ooh la la color for me. I'm very much in love with this color. This blue, green, oceany, tsunami kind of color is gorgeous to me. So mix that up, let those kind of sit, and finish mixing. Here was alcohol ink. I don't think I mentioned that. That's a Rees alcohol ink, and they are phenomenal colors. Counterculture DIY sells them as well. Alcohol inks are going to thin your resin, so you do not need a lot of it. So you do not want to add too much alcohol ink because it does thin your resin. Also, it is a very see-through colorant. You're not going to get the thick color like you're getting with those dispersion and intense colors, or that you would get with a mica. Play around with your colorants and your additives. Get comfortable with them. Understand how they react with one another. And seeing how they work together or against each other will make your journey in resin work a lot more enjoyable. I still had a little bit of clear in my big bin, or my big bin. Yeah, I mixed it in a big old bin in my big container. So no waste. I'm going to put that in the bowl where I still needed some extra resin to help fill out that top of the bowl in the mold. So putting in the clear, and I'm going to add some color to it for better or for worse. I don't know. I think it came out great, but I do sort of like the pattern it has at the current moment in this point of the video, but it will change, and that's fine. So again, getting every last drop basically, scraping the cup, scraping my tool, working to get as much as I can into my mold and avoid any waste. So getting that all scraped in, and then put that aside. I will clean that container later. And then basically just starting with rubbing off my tools that I don't need, and then using the heat gun just real quick, again on low. Not going to spend a ton of time on any of them, but popping any little bubbles that may have rose to the top and surface so that we can get those out of our way and not have them hinder the project down the line. So as you can see, I've got the tsunami color. I am not doing any sort of pattern with this bowl on the bottom. Typically, your bottom's not going to really be seen. The design on the inside's already done, the part that's going to be seen, so I wasn't super concerned with how the bottom looks or turns out, to be honest. But wanted to fill in the color, or fill in the bottom and the color. Some of that was going to go to the edge of the bowl though, so that on the bottom that you would then see on the side. So that's why I added the color to the outside ring, so that the colors will go to that instead of the clear. And then just adding some throughout. And then just kind of swirling, taking one of my stir sticks and swirling. Never ever use something sharp in your mold. As you can see, my tool to the right, I used to get the caps out of the resin. Lids, don't use that to do your stirring. That will scratch your molds. It is sharp. It will damage your molds. And then when you pour the next pour, you will see those lines and scratches. So you do not want to use anything of sharpness. Another reason why I love these little stir sticks. Hitting that with a little bit of heat. I always blow, when I turn on my heat gun, I always turn it on away from my project so that if any dust were in the heat gun or on the edge of the heat gun, I am not blowing dust on my creation. Here, just trying to get the edge, to get the resin to the edges. And then also there were some micro bubbles happening. So going ahead and hitting it with some heat, get that popped for us, get as many of those popped. So you can see the heat gun is moving that resin. As I do that, that is thinning the resin at the moment because you've heated it up, it thins it out, making it more fluid and actively fluidly moving. So you want to be careful. If I had had colorants in that, I could have already started making that change. That was a spritz of rubbing alcohol. That will pop those micro bubbles. So, gonna do two different patterns here. And this was a little oopsie. So I went to pour from this plastic cup, and guess what? It just completely broke down the side. And I was like, huh, what are we gonna do? Well, every mistake or fail can be fixed. Gotta get creative. Don't let your resin go all over your floor and everything. So guess what? I grabbed another cup. This one I had handy was a silicone cup. So I just grabbed it. Being the latter, coloring, it won't really stain that cup, and it's not going to be in there super long. So it works out. So put it there. I am in my left hand though, still holding the plastic cup because I could not pour all of the resin out of that plastic cup into the silicone cup that I had handy in the space in the moment of my oopsie doopsie. So, you just gotta work with what you got and you just roll with it and you roll with the punches. So that's what's going on there. So then I just was taking this color and putting it to the edge of the flowers and going around the edges, trying to keep it as even as possible. So then I poured the rest of that resin into the silicone cup. Go ahead again. Can't just throw resin away. So, gotta use my tools, scrape out as much as I can, transfer it to the silicone cup, and then I toss that plastic one right away, straight to the garbage. Luckily, I had a garbage can nearby. I always try to keep one close by because you may need to move quickly and get something in the trash. And that was one of those situations. I didn't want that to be all over the floor and be a disaster, or all over my workspace, to be honest, because that would have been a disaster. So just hitting it with the heat gun again, popping any more bubbles that are popping up in the surface, not doing a ton of hitting it with the bubble or hitting it with the blow dryer with the heat gun. I noticed that edge was just a little thinner than the rest of it, so I just wanted to add a little bit more to give the same kind of thickness, basically. Then we're going to move to the next one, which I nearly grabbed two and ended up putting my finger in there. So this is the mica powder for the center. I wanted to make sure the center gets there so that it would be seen. So I went ahead and just used my tool to drop some drops in to the centers and let that settle. I don't want my centers to spread out too much, and resin is going to gravitate towards your center, but when it first hits, it's also trying to level out. So if it's not fully leveled yet, it could have the potential to shifting to your edges. But as it levels, then the colorants are going to pull to your center. So just remember that. So I just didn't want to put too much and go too crazy. Now I'm taking the white Armor Art and I am going to transfer it to a cake piping bag. You can make your own by just using a plastic sandwich bag or something of that nature, or a Ziploc bag. You could do that. You could take one of those small ones and transfer it to that, and then makeshift your own piping bag. I got some really cheap ones on Amazon, and I said, let's just do these. They're easy, simple. So they're called cake icing bags, basically. I decided since my 1 cup broke on me, I better not try to do that again with the others. Lesson learned type situation. So I transferred to another silicone cup that I had close by. Again, it won't be in there long, so it shouldn't stain the silicone too bad. And it won't, even if it were to stain the silicone, it's not going to be the end of the world, truthfully, because it's not like it's going to add to the next project as long as I've cleaned it pretty well. So doing a couple different things just to show you guys that it doesn't matter. You don't have to be an artist. Look how funky these look here at this face. At this point, you're going, what is she doing? This looks so strange. We've got some odd colors going, odd shapes happening. What in the world? Don't worry. Obviously, you may not get the full look that you were going for or intended, but you're going to get a pretty awesome look no matter what. So stick with it. Don't get scared. Just keep going. Trust the process. So I'm just doing a couple variables. The first one on the left is circles. The one on the right is following more the flower pattern. And then I'm just adding a little bit more to the circle on here. So just pulling that around. This is the alcohol ink. It's just going to give us another definition in there. You probably won't really notice it in the end, but truthfully it gives you some color variance and depth variance because your mica is going to sink. If you were to use any glitter, that is going to sink. The dispersion color and intense colors, those will be more likely to sink because they're heavier, whereas the alcohol ink is going to be more on top. The armor art is definitely going to sink. It is a lot heavier, thicker when you're doing it. So here, I'm doing the petals. I'm going to in each petal, but you could see I was doing really thin lines, just kind of almost haphazardly random. Looks like a starfish right now. And I just let that sit just a little bit, just letting the resin do what it does. Gonna move, it's gonna start leveling and not necessarily blending per se, but just getting where it's gonna harden. And I bumped the camera, so I apologize. I bumped the stand the camera's on, so we did a little bouncy. And just hitting the heat gun again on both pieces just to ensure bubbles coming up. The bowl is going to have some bubbles because you're working with a mold of very thick, very tall type thing. I wasn't worried on that doing the first pour and doing so much because it's a rather thin mold overall. So you don't want to pour this resin more than about 2 inches thick. It's not designed for what we call a deep pour. But even though the bowl is taller than 2 inches, the overall mold width was not more than 2 inches. So that's why I felt comfortable doing that. But just because of the style of it, you tend to get some bubbles caught up in there. So I like to just hit it with the heat gun periodically just to make sure any bubbles that may have decided to venture back up top can go ahead and get zapped and hopefully out of the way so that they're not going to create a funky crater. Though, when I do the reveal, you'll see we had some. So here the bowl on the bottom gets really funky. But at this point, I'm just using as much of the resin as I can, scraping those cups with my tools, getting it as much into that bowl as possible. I don't want to do this with the flowers because I didn't want the design to get messed up on them. But again, I'm not really worried about the bottom of this bowl because truthfully, what I want to see will already be in place when we unmold it. And you get to see the inside. That was the side that I was more concerned. So definitely looks like a hot mess here. Just willy-nilly throwing all that in. Just like, whatever, get it in, use up my resin. Don't waste, don't waste. We're gonna make it. So just throwing it in. Clean it up. And letting the flowers do what they are gonna do. Let them kind of do the moving. And I only had a little bit of this gold. The mica powder makes the resin thick, super thick sometimes. And if it sat too long, which that one had almost sat too long, it was really thick and sticking to my tool and becoming almost more of a troublesome to get out. But nevertheless, I persevered and I continued to force it and get it in. So then we got the pink and it's just all going in at a funky pattern. But that's okay. Not worried about putting my tools down because I have that Counterculture DIY silicone mat. I have the large one, the original large one, and absolutely love, love, love it. This is a silicone brush. I'm going around the edges, making sure that resin gets down under the lip and down into the piece. And then I'm just swirling, just random swirls design. Not necessarily wanting it to mix, but wanting it to create a pattern with it. Again, no sharp tool. I don't want to scratch what resin's already there. I do not want to scratch my mold because that would be devastating. So just being very cautious about that and using a silicone brush, which is designed for that, which I love my silicone brushes. I use them in probably every project, to be honest, whether it's UV resin. Let me clarify that. I use it in every resin project. Basically, I do so many other crafts. I can't say that I use them in every craft, but in any resin craft, I definitely use those silicone tools. They are my best friend. So here's our cake icing bag, and I cut the tip off just a small amount with our white. And this, I'm being a little bit more artistic, drawing flower petals. Again, not a great artist here in the sense of like drawing. Don't be worried about it. It's fine. We're going to manipulate the resin, so we're not super worried. You're not going to see these lines once we manipulate it with our tools. Just getting somewhat of a pattern down and getting that white in there. Coming to this one, gonna do a little different pattern just to show you guys how unique you can do things. There is no right or wrong way to do this. The resin was coming out all squiggly, and some people might be bothered. I just rolled with it. I was like, well, that's how it wants to come out. All squiggly, we're gonna just do it. So again, following that basic pattern. Then for the bowl, because it's a hot mess as is, not going to be able to ruin it, we're just going to wing it and roll with it. So here I just was throwing it all in. No resin be wasted. Just get it in there and let it be. Let it do its thing. That was kind of my mentality, at least at that point. So, as you can see, it's all crazy. All good, though. All good. And then, just hitting it with the heat gun. This I did a little bit slower through it, just trying to get that white to start moving. But the resin was starting to thicken up. So it is a little harder, but now you can see that that's moving. That's how you'd create some cells for your ocean themes if you wanted that look. I have not perfected the Saul's look yet, but I have not done a ton of ocean scenes either. So that'll be something that we'll work on in the future for sure. Just working with it on the bowl and in a few other projects, I have enjoyed it, and I do feel like I'm getting more comfortable with it, a little bit better with it. So yeah, we'll keep going. So then, just again, taking that tool, I'm not super concerned. So I'm just swirling it around, doing whatever feels crazy, and in the moment, just mixing that all up. And just trying to get it, giving some kind of pattern of sorts, and something a little different than it just being all globbed in there. And then again, just trying to go around those edges, make sure the resin is going down into the surface, or not surface really, but going down into the mold, making sure that hopefully I don't end up with any crazy edge gaps as this goes through the process. And then just another little swirl, continue on with my chaos of that one. Now, the flowers have sat for a few minutes, and I do have a paper towel with a little bit of alcohol ink in my hand, and I'm going to wipe off my tool once I draw a petal around, just so that I'm not dragging those colors and mixing them. So I'm going up and around and back down, creating that petal look. And then I'm just going to make sure that I go in a little bit and that I come in on every one of these and then swirl to the center. That allows that center to start swirling up, looking super good, and bringing those colors together. And then I like to come all the way out to the edge from the center, and that one decided it's a little thicker and it decided to plop right on out the edge. So I wiped off the edge of the mold. That will then pop off pretty easily once it's demolded. So then dragging this out to the edges, cleaning that up as I go. And as you can see, this is why you're not concerned about your artistic flower drawing skills, because now you can't even tell that there were flower artisticness there because we've manipulated it. So on to the next one. Doing sort of similarity, I just decided to come to the skip a step. I didn't do each individual petal. Otherwise, like I did the first one for the first round, I just came to each one and drug it to the middle and swirl it. And then I'll do the drag out as well with it. I was trying to see what yep, there we go. There's the drag out from this, kind of from the center. I don't go exactly to the center, and I'm not pushing my tool all the way to the bottom of the mold, but just through the layers of resin just to bring it forward. But if I did hit my mold on the bottom, you're not worried because it's silicone on silicone and you're not scratching it. If you use something sharper, even like a wooden stir stick, I see people use those, but those can damage your mold if you're not careful. So I would suggest not to do that. Here, just cleaning up the edge of my molds a little bit, and then it will be time to actually hit these with a little bit of heat. Make that resin move just a little bit more where I want it to. Don't want to get crazy, but definitely allow it to really start to bloom and get into place. The same thing on the back. I'm going to just hit that with the heat. It did kind of turn a funky color when it all mixed, but again, it's the bottom. So that's why I said in the beginning, I really feel like the initial pattern was prettier, but it is what it be at this point. No going back, because it would be a hot mess to try to take that off. So hit that with some heat, and then basically at this point, we're going to let those set and let them start blooming. They're already blooming very nicely, but they will sit overnight like this. No manipulating them. Now, I didn't feel like the table wasn't maybe exactly where it needed to be left overnight, so I wanted to adjust that bottom just slightly, but being very cautious as I did so. And because I couldn't see the level underneath, I did put another level on it just to make sure we're in line, and adjust as I needed just to make sure. I felt like the resin was shifting a little bit towards me, so on that left flower, so I wanted to make sure it was in good spot. I do cover this. I have an empty tote that I take, and I just cover the top of it. My tote is clear because I like to be able to see my product through it if I were to come and look at it, but I cover it twofold reasons. One, don't want dust and other particles to fall into the resin. Two, I have a mischievous cat, and even if I were to just leave it, he's going to get in my workspace and mess with it. So after the video, I didn't record this part, but I did clean up all of my tools with rubbing alcohol and paper towels while still having my gloves on to ensure that I could get them super clean. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. I did update all the names on my YouTube channel so that I am now labeling them series and letting you know how many parts there will be so you can be prepared for that. I hope y'all are having a great week, and I will see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.